Good evening, Sukihotu. Welcome to another live Dharma sharing. So today, 6th of September, we are doing part 4, and this actually will be the concluding part of the topic, Insecurity of Life, Realities in the Dream of Existence. So this part 4, we will complete and conclude the topic of insecurity of life. Next week, we will start a new topic on the Awakening series. Before we begin, please feel free to use this link to download the presentation slides so that you will be able to follow along easily with the presentation slides. Okay? So last week we have touched on mental proliferation and how it affects us. So this week we will go one step further and look at some of the techniques that the Buddha taught that will help us to calm our mind and reduce these instances of mental proliferation. So what causes mental proliferation? It's actually because of the way we perceive and interpret what is happening around us. Take, for example, these are very common, inevitable realities of modern life. Environmental activities are constantly stimulating our sense organs, bombarding our attention, because we're getting a lot of things happening in front of our eyes. We're seeing a lot of colors. We see a lot of images on televisions and on our computer screen, YouTube, Facebook, whatever. And all these are actually overloading our senses, right? From seeing, from hearing, from smelling, and all that. So it's bombarding our sense organs. And this is one of the things that affect us and make us begin to think of unwholesome thoughts sometimes. Another thing is that things happening around us, they keep changing. Yeah, anicca, things are uncertain, things are insecure, so everything is unpredictable. For instance, what is happening with the coronavirus pandemic at the moment? So these are the various types of uncertainties and insecurities happening around us. They are unpredictable, they keep changing, and that is causing us to reminding us of a lot of things and memory popping up, and we start to imagine things, right? Three things disturb our mind: our memory, which is remembering the past; our imagination, which is trying to imagine what the future is like; and our expectation, trying to change what is already happening in front of us, the present. So past, future, present, all these, a lot of thoughts are popping up, affecting us. Right? These are the realities of life, of modern life. And then people around us, our relatives, our friends, our bosses, our employees, our associates, they impose a lot of demands on us, expectations on us, putting pressure on us to respond. And we have deadlines to meet. Those of us who have a job, those of us who have a business, those of us who have to work for a living, we have deadlines and schedules, and they drain our resources. They make us very tired. They make us have less sleep and all that, right? They're very stressful sometimes. And things are happening that is unpredicted. Obstacles are happening, problems are happening, difficulties are happening. They arise unexpectedly, and they hinder whatever we have planned. Our planned activities and all that are disrupted. So what happens with these things happening around us? Every one of us is facing several of these from moment to moment. I'm not even talking about just for an hour in a day. I'm talking about every moment we are facing all these things. So what does it do to our mind? It makes us perceive these are all threats. These are affecting us, right? They are denying us of things that we want, right? And they are imposing on us things that we don't want. So these raise perception of threats. And with perception of threats, the mind goes into mental proliferation. So that causes what I call a vicious cycle of emotions. Let's look at the graphical representation of this in a flowchart, simple flowchart. things happening around our environment, stimulating our senses. So these are external stimulus, right? And causing us to wonder what's going on. We start to perceive what's happening. And based on what I just mentioned earlier, moment to moment, we're experiencing all this, and we're constantly perceiving it with a perception of threat or conflict, leading the mind to go into all kinds of conceptualization, thinking about the past, thinking about the future, thinking about the present, right? Having memory, having imagination, and having expectations. And what do these do? These actually trigger in the brain, they trigger the arousal in the amygdala. And when the amygdala is aroused, it goes into a chain reaction, releasing hormones in the body. So these emotional arousals cause the amygdala to release hormones in the body, causing the body to be very tensed. So our body feels uncomfortable. Things happening and our heartbeat goes up, our breathing deepens, and our blood pressure rises, our muscles are tensed up, right? All kinds of things happening in the body. And this is very unhealthy. And when the body is affected, the body and mind are inseparable in the sense that what happens to the body affects the mind. What happens to the mind affects the body. So when the body is affected, it causes a whole chain reaction. We call this the stress reaction, leading to the fright, fight, or flight reaction. If it is something new we have not encountered before, then it triggers the freeze reaction. If it is something which we think we can overcome, so we fight it. If it is things that we find difficult to overcome, we want to run away from it, it's flight. So freeze, fight, or flight reaction. These are stress reactions. And what do? They begin to disturb the mind, right? So these mental disturbances called distress. Stress is the bodily disturbances, the discomfort in the body caused by hormones. Distress is the mental disturbances caused by tensions in the body. And that leads us to behave in habitual ways. And this habitual behavior leads us to begin to experience all kinds of emotional states. So this emotional excitement arise. If it is something pleasurable, we want more, lust and greed. If it is something unpleasant, we get angry. If it is something unknown, new to us, and something fearful, we experience fear, right? Hatred, worry, anxiety, jealousy, conceit, shame, right? All kinds of emotional states are aroused. And when they arise, what we do is we personalize them. And when we begin to personalize them, it leads us to cling on to this experience and say that, oh, I don't like it, I am angry with it. Or if it is something pleasurable, oh, I want more of it. That I, me, or mine is so strong. And this really leads to all kinds of mental proliferation. This whole process is called emotional chain reaction. So this is really what is happening to us day in and day out. Things around us becoming perceptions of threat or conflict, and then we begin to feel stressed. And when we feel stressed, it disturbs the mind, and then we get emotional excitements and leading to mental proliferation. If we personalize all these experiences, right, the subjective experience, right? So this is really what's happening to us day in and day out, leading to mental proliferations. And I spoke about this in the last two sharing. So if you want more about this, go back to the last two sharing, then you can get more details about this. I have a link in the bottom. You can download these if you have not seen this before. So these are all various different ways our mind is disturbed and begin to think in unusual ways, unwholesome ways. Right? Psychologists call this cognitive distortions, but the common term for the layman, it is mental proliferation, which means the mind has gone into unwholesome states. We begin to think of things which are not the reality. So we no longer think in terms of the reality, we think in terms of a self-centered existence, and all these mental proliferations are really centered around this self-centered existence. So what can we do about it? we can practice what I call the 3-step self-compassion. Right? Very simply put, I'll just put it in a simple way before I show you how you can practice it. The simple way is when something arouses your emotions, learn to pause. Don't react right away. Allow time for this emotional excitement and anxiety to calm down. Because when you are emotionally aroused, the amygdala goes into high gear and causes a release of stress hormones, and they flood the body. They cause all kinds of bodily discomfort. So you must allow time for that to subside. The hormonal reaction must subside. Otherwise, you begin to react in very emotional ways. And to help it along, speed up the subsiding of these hormonal reactions, consciously relax. Take a deep breath. Use breathing to help you relax. Relax the body and consciously compose the mind. Bring the mind to a state of composure, right? Maybe the mind is not yet still, but at least the mind is not disturbed and irritated. So bring the mind to a state where it is calm. Calm your mind. And today we're going to look at 5 techniques how we can calm the mind. So this relaxation will help you calm the mind. And when you begin to relax and you feel that your mind is adequately calm, then you can begin to think about what you can do. Purposefully focus on wholesome and beneficial response to the problem. So this is a simple formula. Pause, relax, and then think, which is really introspect. Bring your attention inwards and ask yourself how it is affecting your body, how it is affecting your feelings, how it is affecting your emotional states, how it is affecting the way you think. And you begin to consider how you can respond purposefully, focus on wholesome and beneficial response to whatever is happening around you. So this is, in a nutshell, really how we can overcome all that. And one of the important things you have to do is to practice understanding what's happening and seeing the reality and then interpreting based on reality. We don't do that. When we see things happening around us, we interpret based on self-centered emotions, self-centered existence, yeah? The concept of self-centered existence. So we interpret things based on self-centered emotions leading to this mental proliferation. If you learn to pause, relax, and introspect, you are then able to see the reality more clearly and able to interpret the situation or the circumstances based on the reality that's going on. I'll show you in a moment a simple example how you can practice this. Okay? So this is what happens. Vicious cycle of emotions. Things happening around us trigger the interpretation that, oh, all these are threats and conflicts to us, and they arouse our emotions, the body changes, disturbing the mind, and then we begin to feel all kinds of emotional states. So how can we handle this? We got to learn to practice simple mindfulness, right? So when this stress reaction arises, the body starts to change. So 2 things are happening in the body. First, various organs in the body are reacting. So there are various activities in the body that's very uncomfortable. That is called stress reaction. And then it is also causing disturbances to the mind. So when all these bodily activities are going on, causing discomfort, there's a feeling around it. So these are the first 2 foundations of mindfulness. So observe what's happening to your body. When you experience heart rate going up, you start to realize, oh, my heart is beating faster. See, when you are a mindful person, when you are constantly observing how things are affecting your body and your feelings, you will realize, oh, my heartbeat is now beating faster. And your breathing is deepening. Your muscles are getting all tensed up. Your body temperature is rising now. The body is getting hot, especially here under the throat. Yeah, you feel that it's very warm. Yeah, and that is really your blood pressure rising. Your facial expression start to change. You get all cringed up, you know. And your vocal expression also changes. You start to scream, shout, and lament and all kinds of things. And your fists and your arms are all tensed up, ready for action. And you may be even perspiring. So all these things are happening in your body. Be mindful. So when you are mindful, all these things are happening. That is the first step you can help yourself. Pause. Don't react. And by pausing, right, not reacting, learn to relax. So when you are pausing and you learn to relax, it starts to calm your mind. And when it starts to calm your mind, you can now focus on a more purposeful and beneficial solution to what's going on. So first thing, pause, relax, allow your mind to calm down. What will it do? Right? Then you begin to think about what is really going on. Right? So pause, relax, and think. And what happens next? Because you do that, you are now changing the way you perceive the reality, because the reality is not there to hurt you. The reality is happening around you. You may not have control over it. So begin to look at it from a peaceful perspective, from a harmonious perspective. So look at things from a peaceful and harmonious perspective. When you begin to refocus what's going on from a harmonious and peaceful perspective, your emotions are not aroused anymore. You're more conscious. So you're changing this vicious cycle of emotions into virtuous cycle of composure. And what happens now is that because your emotions are not aroused, you are now more composed. You are now more calm, emotional composure. And when you have emotional composure, your body will not be stressed anymore. The body will relax. With this relaxation of body, your bodily discomfort stops. And now you feel bodily comfort. And when you're able to feel that, now you are in a better position to begin to think about the proper way to resolve the situation that you're in that is causing you a lot of difficulties. So you begin to focus on purposeful, wholesome responses. And when you're able to do that, then you are able to respond in a way that helps you cultivate wellness, comfort, peace, tranquility, and happiness. So this is really, in a nutshell, how we can handle all this vicious cycle of emotions that's happening around us. So today we will look at what are some of the ways that can help us change the way we interpret our circumstances. Right? There are 5 techniques that the Buddha taught. Okay, so it is based on this sutra called Vittaka Santana Sutra. And this is in Majjhima Nikaya, Sutra number 20. Bhante Punnaji has translated this sutra. This is one of the few sutra where Bhante Punnaji has translated completely. And he calls it calming unwholesome thoughts, right? How we can calm the mind, calming unwholesome thoughts. So we're going to take a look at Bhante Punnaji's translation. Basically, it is not so different from what other people are translating, but Bhante Punnaji's translation contains some very helpful techniques and practical things you can do to help you. Of course, in a nutshell, in summary, Bhante calls it selective thinking. But I'll just show you the very simple, practical things you can do. Okay, so you can find that on page 102 of this book. So I'll give you the link to download the book, the Arya Magga Bhavana Level 1, if you do not already have it. So that is found on page 102. And I'll also give you the link. You can just download Bhante's translation. No need to read the whole book if you don't have the time to read the whole book. But I do suggest, if you can, read the whole book. Okay. So the Buddha taught these 5 techniques, 5 ways to calm unwholesome thoughts. I'll just quickly run through. For today's sharing, I will go through the 5 techniques from a theoretical standpoint with some tips. Starting next week, we will start a new series, a new topic where I will talk about relax and introspect. So about relaxation, introspection, how we can actually apply these in a practical way. So the next topic will be the practice of what we have been talking about so far, right? So far, we've been touching on the theory. So now we're going to talk about the theory of these 5 ways to calm unwholesome thoughts. First is to change the channel in your mind. Reflect on something that is more wholesome, more comforting, and that brings wellness. So your mind now switches to think of something good instead of thinking about too much about what is affecting you, like the coronavirus. Instead of thinking about coronavirus pandemic day in and day out, think about something helpful, right? And the second technique is, if your mind is still disturbed, when you try to think of something nice, something more pleasant and comforting, you still find your mind disturbed, then you consider the consequences of the bad thoughts. And if that doesn't work, you can now practice the next thing, which is to learn how to abandon these thoughts. Learn how to let them go, let go the thoughts. And if that still doesn't work, then we are left with the fourth, and the fourth would be perhaps the most powerful technique. Learn how to calm down thought formations, stilling the mind, okay? And then, if all these four don't work, the Buddha prescribed what he called the last resort, by practicing tension and relaxation exercises. So we'll come to that later on. Let's go through them one by one. Method number one, change the mental channel. Change the channel in your mind. What does that mean? So if the mind is focused on something, okay, let's quickly read what Bhante's translation is. So this is actually the Bhante Punnaji's words, his translation of the sutra from the Pali. I skipped the introduction part. I just go straight into the method one, the first technique. It says, if an image arises in a disciple's mind, which, as he reflects on it, arouses evil and unworthy thoughts associated with lust, hate, and confusion, then an image contrary to this image, which is worthy, must be reflected upon. So what does that mean? That means when your mind is distracted by thoughts that are unwholesome, now you start to think of something else which is wholesome. Change the channel in your mind. It's like watching TV or Astro or broadband or YouTube. When one channel is showing something you don't like, what do? You change the channel. So in the same way, when your mind is thinking of certain images that are arousing unwholesome thoughts, what do? You start to think of something more wholesome. Okay? And then Bhante Punnaji translated further using a simile. It says, when this is done, those evil and unworthy thoughts wane and cease, which means they will subside and go and stop. That's what the first technique is supposed to do. Just as a skillful carpenter or his assistant removes an old wooden peg by placing a new wooden peg and hammering on it, so the disciple removes bad mental image by substituting a good mental image. So let's look at that simile. Removes an old wooden peg by placing a new wooden peg and hammering on it. What does that mean? See, in ancient time, during the Buddhist time, people do not use nails. Nails are made from metal. These are very expensive things. So generally, people don't use nails to make furniture. They make furniture to fit, and then they use, they drill holes, and then they use pegs to hammer it in. Something like that, right? Those wooden pegs, hammer it in. So it's not nails. So furnitures or wooden structures are put together with pegs like that. After some time, some of these pegs become soiled and they start to disintegrate. So what do? You place a new peg over it and hammer in to push out the old peg. So by placing a new peg over the old one and hammering on it, you are forcing out the old one, replacing the old one with a new peg. And this is what was meant by this here, right? That the upper paragraph. Then an image contrary to the unwholesome image, right? This new image that is worthy must be reflected upon. So this is really what happens when certain images in your mind arouse emotions and disturbing your mind. Focus your mind on something more pleasant, something more wholesome. You can think about maybe your past experiences, or you can even think about or listen to music if you want to, if that helps you take your mind off what is disturbing you. Okay, so changing the channel, basically, if the evil thoughts, right, if these thoughts are lustful, thoughts of lust, something that you want to go after, and this is lust for a person, in a way it's like a kind of sexual lust. Okay, if you start to have this kind of lustful thoughts for a person, wanting to be near the person, wanting to be with a person who is not with you at that moment, or who may not be responding to you the way you want, you begin to have that, you can meditate on repulsiveness of the body. So this is one of the practices. This is found in Bhante's book, Aryamagga Bhavana Level 1. If the evil thoughts are ill will and hatred towards a person, now this is the opposite. Somebody you hate, somebody you're angry over, and it makes you want to do something bad towards that person. Now you begin to meditate on universal benevolence, metta, and karuna meditations. Right? So meditate on universal benevolence, metta, and compassion, karuna. And or if the thought is either greed, lust, or hatred and anger towards inanimate objects or circumstances, like the coronavirus pandemic, that is a circumstances, or some other objects. Maybe your cell phone not working properly and you're very angry, you can't update your apps. Now there is a new My Sejatera app, some people can't update it. So when you get angry over these things, now you can just meditate on anicca, dukkha, anatta, T-Lakkhana Bhavana, which is anicca, dukkha, anatta. The three characteristics of realities of life. Okay, and if the evil thoughts lead to confusion, vacillation, the mind can't decide, then what you can do, you can calm the mind by recollecting on the virtues of the Buddha, Buddhanusati. There are many meditations you can do. I'll give you the whole list here. Right? So from this book, Aryamagga Bhavana Level 1, I'll just give you a whole list now. So you can actually refer to this list and go to the various practices there. So I won't elaborate because today's sharing is just the theory behind it. I will talk about these in more details in the next topic, which is relax and introspect. So now we're just finishing this topic on insecurity of life. So this is a list you can refer to if you want to. So that is the first method. A very famous psychologist from the past, William James, he was one of the great psychologists before Sigmund Freud's time. He said, the greatest weapon against stress is our ability to choose one thought over another. That means if we are feeling stressed, the greatest weapon we have to help us overcome stress is to change the way we think, to choose good thoughts over bad thoughts. Right? So this is really what the method number 1 is all about. Change the channel in your mind. So I hope that is clear. Okay. Method number 2. Now I'm going to run a little bit fast because it's quite lengthy, so I don't want to drag on too late today. Method number 2, consider evil consequences. That means if you have unwholesome thoughts arising, evil thoughts arising, and you begin to dwell on it and you begin to consider it, then there are consequences. So now, instead of dwelling on these unwholesome thoughts, considering the unwholesome thoughts, you think about what can happen if you went ahead and manifested the unwholesome thoughts. If you begin to work on it, you do something about it, and you go ahead and do the unwholesome things. Think about the consequences. So basically, Bhante Punnaji translated this as, when this is done, that first phrase there, when this is done, means when you have practiced the earlier method, method number 1, and it still didn't work. So when this is done, if the evil and unworthy thoughts still continue to arise, then one should consider the evil consequences of these thoughts. Thus, these thoughts are unworthy, these thoughts are incorrect, these thoughts lead to painful consequences. When this is done, those evil, unworthy thoughts wane and cease. So what this really means is that when you tried the first method trying to think of something more peaceful, and that didn't work. Your mind is still disturbed by these evil thoughts. What do you do? Now you think about if you were to go ahead and execute or operate and do these evil thoughts, what's going to happen? It's going to lead to circumstances or consequences that are not helpful, that are not happy. So think about the evil consequences that may arise. So this is what that really means. And then the simile here is that just as if there is a woman, man, or child who is clean and cleanly dressed, and someone hangs on his or her neck the carcass of a snake, a dog, or a human, he or she would be horrified, humiliated, or disgusted. Even so, when one considers the evil consequences of evil thoughts, they wane and cease. So what this means is that if you consider the consequences, if you think about what are the evil consequences, what you're really thinking is if you went ahead and did the unwholesome thing, it leads to karma. And this thing about these unwholesome things hanging around your neck is really referring to the karma. You will attract bad karma, just like that, right? So that is really what is the example there, right? So you really like as if all these dirty things are hanging around you, because this is your karma if you went ahead and did the unwholesome act. So if the first method didn't work, now you practice the second method and you consider the evil consequences and realize that it leads to bad karma, and hopefully that will help you not act on these unwholesome thoughts, and the unwholesome thoughts should then subside and wane and cease. Okay, so this is really this second technique, considering the evil consequences. Basically, you reflect on the dangers, the destruction, the harmful effects, the damage, all the unwholesome, undesirable consequences that the bad thoughts and actions will bring to yourself, your loved ones, your friends, and other people around you. So when you consider this, you will realize this is really bad karma if you went ahead and did the bad thoughts, if you went ahead and responded to the bad thoughts. So let go the bad thoughts, right? This is helping you to stop these bad thoughts by realizing how harmful they are, how dangerous and destructive they may be. Okay, and Bhante Punnaji actually explained this. Say this thing about realizing the dangers and not acting on it, realizing that it is bad and you don't act on it because you know it's not good for you. That is the practice of hiri and ottappa. Hiri refers to before the action, you realize it is not good, you avoid it. So in hiri, there is a certain essence of avoidance, avoiding doing bad things. Ottappa, on the other hand, is that if you have done something unwholesome, you realize that it is unwholesome, right? So you realize, you become a little bit remorseful about it, realizing that, oh, you've done something wrong. You shouldn't be doing that. So that's ottappa, which is after the fact. So let's listen to Bhante Punnaji explain hiri ottappa.
The hiri and the ottappa really refers to hiri is before doing a wrong thing. You are reluctant to do the wrong thing. That is hiri. Ottappa means after doing the wrong thing, you begin to feel that you have done something wrong. Repentance. You repent. Hiri is, I call it reluctance and repentance. Before you do it, you are reluctant to do it, After doing it, you begin to repent. Oh, I have done something wrong. Now, that is what is called Hiryottappa, which is the same thing as the superego of Freud. So these things are very useful to understand so that we are able to gain control over these emotions and the emotional behavior.
So basically what Bhante Punnaji is pointing out is that by understanding this, it helps you gain control over your emotional behavior so that you can overcome these emotional arousals. So Hiri and Ottappa is the Buddha's way of reminding us that consider consequences before you act on something. And if you have done something which is unwholesome, think about how it has hurt other people and realize that it is not the right thing to do, and that will help you not do it in the future. Okay, so that is the second method. Now the third method, again, it starts off with when this is done. So what this really means is now having tried out second method and it still didn't work. So in other words, this is saying that if the second method didn't work, now realize that these methods are not different methods you use as and when you choose. Well, you can do that once you become confident in applying them, but they are basically helping you to go step by step. Right? So you can also apply them at random, but basically it's you try them step by step initially. So now if the second method doesn't work, that's why it says when this is done, the second method and didn't work. So when this is done, if the evil and unworthy thoughts still continue to arise, then one should stop paying attention to these thoughts and stop reflecting on them. When this is done, those evil, unworthy thoughts wane and cease. So what this third method is saying is now you practice letting go. Right? This is only when you reach this point, and there are various practices you can apply to help you let go and abandon the unwholesome thoughts, the unwholesome images arising in your mind, arousing your mental proliferations. So these images, you can learn to let them go, abandon them. Okay, and the simile here is just as a man with eyes who does not want to see something that comes within the range of his vision would shut his eyes or look aside, even so one should shut one's mind to these evil thoughts by not paying attention to them and ignoring them. So in other words, when these unwholesome thoughts arise, now you can't stop the thoughts arising. Of course, if it's something in front of you, you are looking at, you can look aside, you can look away from it, and you won't continue to see the unwholesome images. But if it is a thought, you can't just stop the thought arising. What you can do is do something to just let go the thought, abandon the thought. And there are various practices you can do to help you abandon the thoughts. Right? One of the important practice is what we call harmonious exercises. There are 4 steps, and it's Samapadana, made of 4 different practices. But the one that helps you abandon unwholesome thoughts arising is called Bahana, abandonment. Bahana. Abandon unwholesome thoughts arising from unconscious repressed memories. Anusayam. By letting go of memory, imagination, expectation that arouse emotional reaction. That means somewhere in your memory, somewhere in your imagination, somewhere in your expectations, it arouses your emotions and you want to react. And that reaction is called tanha. So if you have these things happening, right, these are arising because of the unconscious repressed memories. We spoke about this 2 sharings ago. So you can go back and look at Awakening series number 11. Then you can see what is anusayam and mental proliferations. So this is really that method that the Buddha was trying to teach. So when these images, unwholesome images arise, right, then realize that this will arouse your emotions, learn to let them go. Abandonment. Abandonment is Pahana. And I'll explain the translation in a moment. Let's listen to Bhante Punnaji explain Pahana.
Prahana means to throw away. Prahana. Han means to throw away. Prahana is to throw away hardly or in a very strong way, a strong throwing out. You see, it is like we keep a doorkeeper who will let only good things, good people to enter, bad people are thrown out. So we have a strong built doorkeeper so that if someone tries to enter, that person can throw. That means we have to throw out. That is prahana. Now, what are the things we are going to throw out? Although we are guarding the senses in this way, we may be guarding the senses, but still the mind get polluted. How is that? Memories coming. It is not something that we see, hear, smell, taste, touch. What we have seen before, maybe yesterday, or maybe last week, or maybe last month, or maybe even last year. Memories of the past come into our head, but the moment it comes, it has to be thrown out. That is the meaning of prahana. But it's not only something about the past, maybe something connected with the future comes into our mind. This is the problem, that your mind doesn't stay there. It goes away. So this is why they try to force the mind to stay in one place, and it becomes a big struggle. And that is what they call concentration. So this is the problem, that concentration. But the important thing here is not to start concentrating, but to learn to relax. To learn to relax the body. To relax is not to be doing something, but to stop doing things. So that relaxation is the way to throw out So you throw out not by struggling, but by relaxing.
So Bhante was saying, you throw out the thoughts not by struggling or fighting against it, by simply relaxing and letting it go. Now, the word pahana, Bhante pointed out, han, this is the same root word as arahant, right? So arahant, same root word, han. So han basically means to throw, to get rid of, eliminate, or throw away. Okay, so to abandon. So pra from the Sanskrit word pra means doing it in a strong way. Now, why are arahant called arahant? Because arahant, the word ara, right? Ara is actually bondages, bonding you to existence. So arahant is the person who has thrown away bondages to existence, the person who has abandoned all bondages and all clinging to existence. That's why it's called the arahant. The han is basically throwing it away. So pahana is to abandon the evil thoughts. There are many techniques. Earlier on, I show you those meditation techniques. So they are also the various techniques to help you abandon evil thoughts by simply relaxing and practicing the various meditations. And therefore, Bhante was saying to abandon the evil thoughts in a firm way, assuredly and firmly. That's why it's pahana, right? So it's strongly, with relaxation, not concentration. So the practice of satipatthana is one of the important practices to learn how to abandon these unwholesome thoughts. So unfortunately, the translation of the samadhi, bringing the mind to a stillness samadhi, is called concentration. So Bhante was saying it's not concentration. You can't concentrate on that. You can just learn to relax your mind. So that is the third method. Now, if that doesn't work, now you have the fourth method. Right? So when this is done, that means the third method did not work. If the evil, unworthy thoughts still arise, then one should focus on relaxation and calmness, calming down the activity of thought. When this is done, those evil, unworthy thoughts wane and cease. Now, what this technique is saying is that you learn how to bring the mind to a state of stillness, right? Calming down the activity of thought. That means bringing your mind to a state where it is no longer thinking thoughts of all kinds of thoughts. So you basically stilling the mind of thoughts. And this is really a higher level of practice. You don't come to this until you have tried the first three methods and that didn't work. Then only you come to number 4, which is really stilling the mind. And one of the practices for stilling the mind is anapanasati, right? The mindfulness of breathing, or attentiveness to breathing. Okay. So the simile that Bhante has translated is, just as a man who is running begins to walk slowly, or a man who is walking slowly begins to stand, or a man who is standing sits down, or a man who is sitting lies down. Okay, thus changing from a more tiresome position to a less tiresome position, or a more restful and more relaxed position. Even so, one focuses on relaxation and calmness and rest the mind. So what this is really saying is to ask you to exercise, do some exercise that slow down your mind, right? So as though your mind is now running, like a person running, now slow it down to walking pace. As though the mind is now walking, slow it down to standing. When it's standing, slow it down to sitting. And when it is sitting, finally slow it down to lying down. We spoke about this earlier on. This is really samatha meditation. Okay, so you only use this method, samatha meditation, when you have tried those first 3 methods, because those first 3 methods are very quick solutions. If they don't work, then you can come to samatha meditation. Okay, so in samatha meditation, I have already explained this before, but I'll just quickly run through it. You can find this in this sutra, Tatiya Samadhi Sutra. Okay, so basically it's talking about your emotional mind, your chitta. How should the chitta be steadied? I just read through all 4 steps first. How should the chitta be made to settle down? How should the chitta be unified? And finally, how should the chitta be concentrated? But unfortunately, this translation of the word concentrated is not correct. So the real meaning here is samadhi, and that is mental equilibrium, stillness of chitta. So it should read that how should the chitta be stilled, right? Brought to a state of stillness, right? So this is really talking about the mind entering into the jhanas. And you have to learn to abandon the 5 hindrances before you can successfully bring your mind to enter into the state of jhanas. Okay. Now, the first one, how should the chitta be steadied? It is like as though your chitta is running. Your mind is like running, like a monkey jumping from tree to tree. So the mind is running, going very fast. So first, slow it down by bringing it to a state of walking instead of running. So that is what is known by steadying. Now, if it is still, now it is walking, the next level is to bring it to a more peaceful position. From walking, the next more peaceful position or restful position, that is standing, right? So from running to walking, walking to standing, that is settle down. Now, if you want the mind to completely still, then the next thing is to bring the mind from standing to sitting down, and from sitting down to lying down. And then you become unified. And here the word unified meaning your chitta, your emotional mind, is unified with your mano, your thinking mind. This is actually the practice of how you can enter into the jhanas by cultivating the 5 constituents of jhanas, the 5 jhanangas. I've already explained this in previous sharing, so I'm not going to repeat myself too much on it. But basically, this is really how to bring the mind to a state of stillness by slowing down the mind. So samatha meditation, there are many various practices in samatha meditation that you can try out, okay? And then you will be able to use this 4th method. This 4th method is by far the most effective, right, of the common methods. So these are 4 common methods. The 5th method is actually the last resort. So let's re-look at these 4 methods, basically. So one of the way to help you slow down the mind is to practice LSD breathing. Now, I won't elaborate on how to do this. I'll just run through with you. LSD breathing simply means consciously allow the breathing to slow down, which helps to relax the body and calm the mind. And that is, do not exert effort on slowing down the mind. Simply allow the breathing to slow down, and your mental process will also slow down. They are connected. Mind and body are connected. So when your body begins to slow down with your breathing slowing down, your thought process will also slow down. By first allowing your breathing to go longer, allowing the breathing to flow longer, so it is L for long, then allow it to become more stable and slower, effortlessly, naturally, that's the S, and then finally take in deeper breathing. Right? I will go into this technique and practical aspect of this technique in the next sharing. So now LSD breathing, this is basically the practice you can use to slow down your thought process. Right? And as I mentioned, the more powerful way is, of course, applying anapanasati, so attentiveness to breathing. By practicing anapanasati, your mind is now focused on the process of breathing, and by doing so, the mind is now taken away from these unwholesome thoughts, and slowing down the mental process, the unwholesome thoughts will stop. So this is the principle behind this 4th method. These are the 4 common methods, right? So out of these 5 ways, we have spoken about the first 4, and these first 4 are the most common methods you should try. Number 5 is really a last resort. So you should work hard on practicing the first 4 methods. So let's listen to another of my teacher, Venerable Dr. Pemarathana, where he spoke about these first 4 techniques applying virya. Virya is often translated as energy. Sometimes it's translated as willpower. Sometimes it's translated as strength. Sometimes it's translated as perseverance. I will give you a more detailed explanation on virya later on. But basically, applying these 4 applying virya when you are practicing these first 4 techniques. So let's listen to explanation by Bhante Pemarathana.
When Buddha gave you the first technique, okay, replacing, and then if that doesn't work, the second technique, reflecting the consequences. If that doesn't work, third technique, disregarding or dropping or not attending. If that doesn't work, the fourth technique, analyzing the agitation or the discomfort or the origin. And if you fail in all 4 cases, what does it mean? I mean, you or the thoughts? No, I mean, if you fail in all these 4 techniques, you are not able to be successful in all these 4 techniques. What does it say about you? You are weak, right? You are weaker than your thoughts. I would say you are lazy. So this has given by the Buddha in this discourse as a last resort. Remember, this is not the first technique. I would say if someone would, don't try to go to the next technique very fast. Now, Buddha has not asked you to go to the last resort first. You really have to give genuine effort with other techniques. If you happen to fail all 4 techniques, that means you don't have enough virya. You are lazy. I mean, you are not really giving enough effort actually. You may be using the techniques but a little bit, not really fully. That means your virya, that our strength, mental strength is weaker. Of course, remember that this is not the final way to solve this problem. But I think I'm looking at these techniques as a corrective technique. If you are so lazy that all the 4 techniques failed, the last resort is actually increase your virya. It's nothing. No, I mean this issue is really nothing to do with the thoughts. It's your own spiritual strength. Your virya. You are weak in virya, and do something to develop the virya. But there are many other ways to develop the virya. But it looks like Buddha is asking us to do that. Just like now thoughts are chewing you. But you become a strong man and grab the thoughts as a weaker man, and develop your strength, and do that.
So Bhante Pemarathana was saying that if the first 4 technique is not working, it's because you are not working hard enough at it. And he in fact used the word very accurately. You're lazy. You're not working hard enough at it. You have to apply virya. So what is virya? So let's now listen to an explanation of the meaning of virya. Virya is the energy, the strength, the perseverance, the effort. The energy and the perseverance, right? The psychological part of it. Vayama is the effort, the actual physical practice of it. So now let's listen to Bhante Pemarathana explain to you these 2 things, virya and vayama.
Some of you already may be familiar with this term virya. In English, we can call it strength, maybe perseverance, the inner willpower. So it's more like it's one of the faculties that Buddha talked about. So as human beings, we have this inner strength, inner willpower, and also ability to make effort and you can also call it like a zeal, perseverance, and this inner ability is what Buddha called virya. And we find this term virya in number of places, and you may be familiar with the similar other term, what we call vayama. In the Noble Eightfold Path, when we start with right understanding, and when it comes to number 6, we call it right effort. And there we have another term called vayama, samma vayama. And virya and vayama are very closely connected. Actually, virya is the willpower, the strength, and vayama is the putting forth of that virya. So the vayama is activating the virya, like applying the virya. So it's the same as very related two terms talking about the same thing. When you say it virya, that refers to the ability, the inner ability, and when you call it vayama, it refers to the application of that ability, putting forth the effort.
So here you can hear that Bhante Pemarathana making the distinction between virya and vayama, but they are both very much interrelated. One is the inner strength, and the other one is applying it to put it into practice. And basically, if the first 4 techniques didn't work, it simply means you are not trying hard enough. But if you did try hard enough and you're still disturbed by these unwholesome thoughts, you are left with the 5th method. Okay, now I want to point out at this juncture, Bhante Punnaji's translation of the 5th method is somewhat a little bit different from other people's translation, simply because Bhante pointed out that they overlooked one important aspect, which I will explain later. After I compare Bhante's translation with other people's translation, then I will explain to you why it is different. Okay, it's not a big difference, just a very subtle difference that made all the differences in the world. Okay, so here is Bhante's translation of this 5th method. He says, when this is done, that means the first 4 methods didn't work. If the evil, unworthy thoughts still arise, one should relax the clenched teeth, relax the tongue pressed on the palate, and thus remove the thought associated with evil easily without exertion by relaxing and calming the mind. So what Bhante here is saying is that when these thoughts arise and disturb your mind, often it causes your body to be all tensed up. And maybe, your teeth are biting on each other, and your teeth are all clenched up, and your tongue may be pressing up against the palate, hard on the palate, and your jaw is all stiff. Then Bhante says, learn how to relax these, right? And when you relax these, you can actually let go the thought by relaxing and calming the mind. And Bhante then translate the metaphor, the simile here, just as a strong man might hold a weak man by the head or the body and throw him out easily without exerting himself. Being fully relaxed and calm, even so the disciple relaxes the jaws and tongue and throws out the thought without exerting himself by relaxing the body and calming the mind. So in other words, when all these thoughts are disturbing you and making you all tensed up, then learn how to relax this tension and the thoughts can be released from it. I will explain a little bit further on this in a moment. We look at other people's translation. So one of the most common translation is Bhikkhu Bodhi, but it is very similar to everybody else. So it's not different from all other scholars translating it, method number 5. Right? So here is basically their translation. It says, then with teeth clenched and his tongue pressed against the roof of his mouth, he should beat down, constrain, and crush mind with mind. When with his teeth clenched and his tongue pressed against the roof of the mouth, he beats down, constrains, and crushes mind with mind, then any evil, unwholesome thoughts connected with desire, with hate, and with delusion are abandoned in him and subside. So basically, every other scholar that I've come across translated this to mean that finally the last resort is that you force the thought out of your mind by clenching your teeth, pressing the tongue against the upper roof of your mouth. You force the thought out of your mind. If you go and ask all the psychologists in the world, there will not be one single psychologist who will say to you, this method can work. This method will never work because there are two things happening. You cannot force a thought out of your mind. You can try this. Try this yourself. If there is a thought in your mind, see if you can force it out of your mind, right? You can use other methods, but you cannot just force it out of your mind. You cannot remove the thought as you wish, right? You're fighting the thought. Now, the basis behind this, it appears many in the commentaries, it also mentioned that this appears to be based on Jainism or based on asceticism. The practice of asceticism was originally coming from Jain practice, right? So this is really like the practice of asceticism, forcing the thought. That is asceticism, and we know that doesn't work. The Buddha himself also pointed out it didn't work. Okay, so Bhante Punnaji's translation is that, right, one should relax the clenched teeth, relax the tongue pressed on the palate, and thus remove the thought associated with evil easily without exertion by relaxing and calming the mind. And I actually, when I first came across all these other translations and compared it with Bhante's translation, which of course clearly is somewhat different, I discussed quite a lot with Bhante, but unfortunately, of course, Bhante is no more around to be able to repeat what he said to me. I'm sharing with you what I recall that I have heard and understood in my discussions with Bhante about this method number 5, because I was also well aware from the practice of psychology that you cannot force a thought out of your mind. And that's why I asked Bhante, how can that be the case that in the sutra they say you force the thought of your mind? Actually, Bhante mentioned that when you experience these thoughts arising, disturbing you, naturally your whole body will become very tense because of this stress reaction. And one of the biggest signs of very strong tensions in the body is that your teeth are all clenched up and your tongue is all pressed against the palate. So Bhante was saying that you must learn to exert that tension and then relax it. When you exert and do that, tension, relaxation, tension, relaxation. So basically, he pointed out it is tension, relaxation, tension, relaxation. So when you do that, you're actually flexing your body. The body and the mind are interconnected. So when you flex the body, it also causes the same flexing of the mind. So your mind gets tensed and released, tense and released. By doing that, it's like massaging your mind. Then the thought can then subside because of this tension, relaxation, massaging the mind. This is really what I have understood in my discussion with Bhante. Okay, so I'm sharing with you my explanation or my interpretation of what I believe I heard and understood from Bhante, and this is why you can see that it is in the translation of Bhante Punnaji. And Bhante actually said something to the effect that the other translators, when they read the Pali word, they only saw half of the exercise, and that is the tension part. They overlooked the fact that there is a relaxation part. So when you tense, you have to relax. Think about it. If you are tensing your body, of course, then you have to relax. You cannot stay tense like that and spend the rest of your life all tensed up like that. Whatever you tense, you have to relax. And this is why this tension relaxation is what will work. So this is really the application of tension and relaxation to flex the mind and release the thoughts. This is really what the essence of the where Bhante Punnaji was coming from. Okay, but please also realize I am explaining from my own understanding, right? My paraphrasing of my discussion with Bhante. Unfortunately, Bhante won't be around to explain that, and Bhante did not actually give a Dharma talk on this, so he didn't explain much on this at all. But really, you all know, everybody knows that one of the key things that Bhante has been teaching us is to learn how to relax. That's why our main practice is called relax and introspect, right? So this tension, relaxation continuously will flex the mind and release the thoughts. This is really the basis behind Bhante Punnaji's translation of this fifth method. And everybody else just only looked at the tension part and overlooked that you need to relax. Okay, so it is like yin and yang. You cannot have one without the other. You cannot have tension without relaxation. So it is this alternating between tension, relaxation that can help the mind to release these unwholesome thoughts. And there are a few exercises you can do for this. So in other words, this is the last resort. When you are disturbed by thoughts and you tried the first 4 methods and they really didn't work, and you work hard at it, you're not lazy, like Bhante Pemarathana was saying, you're not lazy, you tried it, you worked on it and it didn't help you, then this is the last resort. So one of the exercises is Bhante's yoga exercises, right? And when you practice that, I will give you the link, right? The video, you can see it on YouTube, the video, or you can download only the MP3 if that's what you want. So you can actually watch the video or in YouTube, or you can download the MP3 file, okay, from these 2 links, where you can then follow. Better to watch the video, then you can see what the exercise looks like. And then you can download the MP3 and put it on your cell phone, and then you can play it every morning to follow it. Okay, but the first time you can watch the video. And this is the exercise. I won't have time to show you the exercise. The exercise is about 45 minutes long, so you can actually practice this Bhante Punnaji's yoga exercises. This is by far the most powerful way of practicing tension relaxation. So the link is in this presentation slides, so you can actually have these links and use them. Okay. There's another exercise you can do, and that is Bhante Pemarathana's body awareness exercise. Even though Bhante Pemarathana didn't explain about tension relaxation, he did explain that when you do this exercise, you must observe the tension you're experiencing and observe the relaxation you are experiencing. So there is really the element of tension and relaxation. So again, this is also based partly on yoga. So you can, I will give you the link that you can download, watch it on YouTube. So it is tiny.cc/body awareness. So you can watch this on YouTube. Then you can see Bhante Pemarathana's body awareness exercise. So this is another exercise you can do. Okay. This is a little shorter. It's only about 20 odd minutes. Whereas Bhante Punnaji one is a very extensive exercise, yoga, and that definitely is very helpful. And when we attend Bhante Punnaji's retreat, we love that. That is the best thing we do, okay? The yoga exercises. So basically, with that, I complete my sharing. These are the 5 techniques that the Buddha taught, 5 ways to calm unwholesome thoughts. So with this, we basically conclude this current topic of insecurity of life, realities in the dream of existence. Okay, so starting next week, I will start a new topic called relax and introspect. basically talking about the process of relaxation and introspection from a more practical point of view, and also will bring in some more examples from psychology and from neuroscience to explain those practices. So I hope you will join us in the future next topic, relax and introspect. So with this, I end the sharing for this current topic, insecurity of life. Okay, so you can download this presentation slides from this link, and you can also download a soft copy of the book if you don't have the printed book. Be aware that there are different editions. Take the latest edition, which I think was March 2018. If you have a book that is dated older than that, then it is outdated. The latest edition of Level 1 book, actually, Bhante Punnaji revised this just before he left for Sri Lanka, and that was in 2018, and that is where he passed away, in Sri Lanka. So we were very fortunate. He has updated this Level 1 book substantially. It's a substantial update. So please download this if you have the old copy, because the new copy contains, the new edition contains a lot of new stuff, okay? And of course, if you want the full translation on one page, right, tiny.cc/bp-mn20, that is Bhante Punnaji's translation of Majjhima Nikaya, Sutra number 20, Vitakka Santana Sutra. So with this, I end my sharing. Let's see if there are any questions. I don't see any questions. So please join us. Starting from next week, we will be covering a new topic, right? So this is the end of this current topic, insecurity of life. Starting next week, it will be relax and introspect. Okay, I hope you will join us. Since I don't see any questions posted, please feel free to email me your questions if you have, or go to my Facebook and send me a message. Right? If you have any questions arising after this, anything related to what I have been sharing every Monday. So join us next Monday. So let's finish the day with sharing our merits. We have spent the last 1.5 hours together sharing the Buddha Dharma and accumulated good merits from all this. So let's realize that there are a lot of people around the world who are still suffering from the coronavirus pandemic. So let us put our palms together and share the merits with them. We dedicate the merits we have acquired from sharing the Buddha Dharma to all beings affected by the coronavirus pandemic around the world. May suffering beings be suffering free. May the fear-struck fearless be. May grieving beings shed all grief. May all beings find peace and relief. By the grace of the merits we have acquired, may we never follow the foolish. May we follow only the wise until we attain the highest and most supreme bliss of Nibbana. Idang me nyati nang hotu sukita hontu nyatayo. Idang me nyati nang hotu sukita hontu nyatayo. Idang me nyati nang hotu sukita hontu nyatayo. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Thank you very much for your time. I wish you and your family, please stay safe. May you be well, comfortable, peaceful, and happy. And have a good evening. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.